Imagine a man who was rejected by art school twice and lived as a homeless man on the streets of Vienna, subsisting on charity soup. How did this nobody transform into a monster who nearly swallowed the entire world? Today, we will not talk about the Hitler you know from history books. Instead, we will open the black boxes that the Nazis hid for decades. We will talk about the Jewish doctor whom Hitler secretly protected, the terrifying cocktail of drugs he injected into his body daily, and the tragic and suspicious love story with his niece that ended with a mysterious gunshot. Did Hitler really die in the bunker, or was the body burned by the Soviets merely a double? Prepare yourselves, for we are about to dive into the deepest and strangest investigation into the life and death of Adolf Hitler. Are you ready to uncover the hidden truth? Our story begins not in Grand Berlin, but in the cold streets of Vienna in 1908. Here we find a lean young man in tattered clothes, carrying his paintings and running after an impossible dream: to become a world-renowned artist. Adolf Hitler, the young man who sanctified art, was rejected twice by the Academy of Fine Arts. The reason? A lack of talent in drawing. This sentence was the first nail in the coffin of world peace. During that period, Hitler lived a ghostly life. He stayed in homeless shelters and sold hand-painted postcards to tourists to buy his next meal. But the most surprising thing in our files today is that the anti-Semitic Hitler of that time lived in a hostel owned by Jews, and most of the customers who bought his paintings were also Jewish. In fact, the investigator finds a shocking surprise. The doctor who treated his mother, Clara, for cancer until her final moments was a Jew named Eduard Bloch. Hitler, the monster who would later burn millions, sent this doctor a postcard thanking him, dubbed him the Noble Jew, and later granted him special protection from the Gestapo. In this paragraph, we analyze how the artistic rejection complex turned into an obsession with control. Hitler did not hate Jews by nature. Rather, he was looking for a scapegoat to blame for his personal failure and extreme poverty. Vienna at that time was boiling with extremist nationalist ideas, and there, amidst the smell of cheap paint and free soup, the persona of the dictator was born. He spent his hours in libraries reading about races and magic, building in his imagination a world where there was no place for the weak. These 10 years in Vienna were the laboratory of evil that shaped the mind of the man who would change the map of the earth. With the outbreak of World War I in 1914, Hitler saw war as a salvation from his miserable life. He joined the Bavarian army, but he was no ordinary soldier in the trenches. He worked as a runner, the most dangerous task where he had to run through a hail of bullets to deliver messages between commands. He earned the Iron Cross, First Class, which is another surprise, as this medal was rarely given to a soldier with the rank of corporal. The great historical irony? The officer who nominated him for this medal was also Jewish. However, the turning point in Hitler's life, and the secret he hid for a long time, occurred in October 1918. Hitler was subjected to a British mustard gas attack, which led to his temporary blindness. He was transferred to the Pasewalk Military Hospital, and here, the investigator opens a secret medical file. Documents indicate that Hitler's blindness was not only organic due to the gas, but was hysterical blindness resulting from psychological trauma. The psychiatrist Edmund Forster, who treated him, used hypnosis and convinced Hitler that he had supernatural powers and was chosen by fate to restore Germany's greatness. This moment in the hospital was the true birth of the Führer legend. Hitler left the hospital believing with certainty that he possessed a vision that transcended humans. Strangely, Dr. Forster, who knew the truth about Hitler's psychological state, committed suicide, or was disposed of, under mysterious circumstances after Hitler rose to power in 1933. In this paragraph, we reveal how madness and heroism intertwined in Hitler's mind, and how WWII gave him not just medals, but a new religion, where he sanctified strength and despised peace. If you want to know the true face of Hitler, you must look at his relationships with women, specifically with his niece, Geli Raubal. This girl was the only obsession in Hitler's life. In 1929, Geli moved to live with Hitler in his luxurious Munich apartment, and her life turned into a golden prison. Hitler was madly jealous of her, forbidding her from going out, monitoring her calls, and controlling every detail of her life. In September 1931, Geli was found dead in Hitler's apartment with a gunshot wound to the heart from his personal pistol. The official Nazi narrative called it a suicide, but the Investigator finds holes in this story. Geli wanted to escape to Vienna to marry another man, and there was a violent argument between her and Hitler hours before her death. The autopsy reports disappeared, and the case was closed with suspicious speed. Hitler fell into a severe bout of depression and contemplated suicide. For the rest of his life, he kept a photo of Geli in his room and said she was the only woman he ever loved. This incident revealed the sadism and instability in Hitler's personality. He was incapable of healthy love. Instead, he saw women as possessions. Some say Geli's death was what stripped the last ounce of humanity from Hitler's heart, turning him into a Cold War machine. In this paragraph, we analyze how this scandal affected his political rise and how the Nazi propaganda machine, under Goebbels, laundered Hitler's reputation, presenting him to the German people as an ascetic man who dedicated his life to the homeland and had no time for whims, while the walls of his apartment hid bloody secrets. While the world saw Hitler as a powerful and tireless leader, the truth behind closed doors was entirely different. We now open the file of Dr. Theodor Morell, the man whom Nazi leaders nicknamed the Master of Injections in the Reich. In 1936, Hitler met Morell to treat chronic digestive problems, and from that moment, Morell became the shadow that never left Hitler, transforming the German leader's body into a mobile chemical laboratory. The secret diaries of Dr. Morell, found after the war, indicate that Hitler consumed a terrifying cocktail of more than 80 types of drugs and chemicals daily. These were not just vitamins. They included Pervitin, high-concentration methamphetamine, and Eucodol, a powerful opioid derivative similar to heroin, in addition to hormones extracted from animal glands and toxins like strychnine in small doses. Hitler would start his day with an injection of Vitamultin to feel absolute energy and end it with powerful sedatives to be able to sleep amidst the roar of the cannons. This chemical addiction explains many of Hitler's disastrous military decisions. In the Battle of Stalingrad, Hitler lived in a state of chemical euphoria that made him refuse to retreat or listen to the advice of his generals, believing that his will alone could break the laws of nature. As the end of the war approached, his body began to collapse. Parkinson's tremors appeared, he lost a lot of weight, and his fits of rage became unbearable. The Investigator raises a fundamental question here. Was the world being ruled by a man who had lost touch with reality because of drugs? Morell was the dealer who kept Hitler on his feet while the Reich collapsed around him, to the point that Nazi leaders tried to fire the doctor several times, but Hitler would scream, "Morell is the only one who understands me." Hitler said in his memoirs, "Divine providence protects me so that I may complete my mission." This may sound arrogant, But when the investigator looks at the record of his assassination attempts, he finds something bordering on the miraculous. Hitler survived 42 documented assassination attempts, some of which failed due to coincidences lasting only a matter of seconds. The most famous of these attempts was Operation Valkyrie in 1944, when Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg placed a briefcase bomb under the meeting table in the Wolf's Lair bunker. The bomb exploded, officers were killed, the room was destroyed, but Hitler emerged with only minor injuries and bleeding ears. The reason? An officer had moved the briefcase behind the thick wooden table legs, which absorbed most of the blast seconds before the detonation. Years before that, specifically in 1939, a German carpenter named Georg Elzer nearly changed the course of history. Elzer planted a time bomb in a pillar behind the platform where Hitler gave his annual speech in Munich. The plan was perfect, but Hitler finished his speech and left the hall only 13 minutes before the explosion because of sudden fog that made him decide to take the train instead of a plane. In 1943, a disguised bomb was placed in liquor bottles on board Hitler's personal plane. The plane flew, hours passed, and it landed safely. Investigators later discovered that the fuse had frozen due to the extreme cold at high altitudes and did not detonate. This repeated survival made Hitler believe in his own sanctity, while simultaneously causing his opponents to despair. Historians analyze these attempts not as security failures, but as the drama of fate. Every time Hitler survived, he became more extremist and bloody, believing that hidden forces blessed him, which eventually led to his continued destruction of Germany until the very last moment.
Behind the political and military slogans of Nazism lay a hidden world of magic and occultism. We now enter the Ahnenerbe organization, the secret research branch of the SS, founded by Heinrich Himmler with Hitler's blessing. Hitler was not just a politician. He saw himself as the heir to medieval knights and ancient mythical powers. The Nazis sent exploration expeditions to the ends of the earth, from the deserts of Iraq searching for the Ark of the Covenant, to the Amazon rainforests, and even to the mountains of Tibet, as we mentioned in our previous files. There was an obsession with possessing symbols of power. When Hitler occupied Austria in 1938, the first thing he did was head to the Hofburg Museum to seize the Spear of Destiny, the spear said to have pierced the side of Christ. The legend says that whoever possesses it will rule the world, and whoever loses it will die immediately. Hitler kept it in a fortified bunker in Nuremberg throughout the war.
It didn't stop at artifacts. The Nazis had scientists studying the world ice theory, which rejects modern physics and believes the universe is governed by clashing forces between ice and fire. Hitler sometimes relied on astrologers and soothsayers for his decisions, even though he later banned astrology in Germany so his enemies could not use it against him. In this paragraph, the investigator reveals that Nazism was essentially a new pagan religion, aiming to replace Christianity with the ancient legends of Arya. This obsession with the paranormal is what drove them to spend millions of marks on strange projects like the Bell and the search for entrances to the Hollow Earth, believing that traditional science was not enough for victory and that dark forces must be summoned to support the Third Reich. While Hitler presented himself to the German people as the priest of the Reich, who dedicated himself to the nation and had no time for marriage or family, there was a woman living in the shadows for 12 years, completely hidden from the eyes of the world. We are talking about Eva Braun, the girl who met Hitler when she was 17, while working as an assistant to Hitler's personal photographer, Heinrich Hoffmann.
The investigator finds in this file a tragic story of a woman who sacrificed her existence for a man who saw love as a weakness. Eva was not allowed to appear by his side in official forums, and when important guests visited them at the Berghof, his mountain home, she had to hide in her room. This fatal isolation drove Eva to attempt suicide twice, the first in 1932 with a gunshot to the neck, and the second in 1935 with an overdose of sleeping pills, just to grab the attention of Hitler, who was busy with his political rise. But what linked Hitler to this simple girl who did not care about politics? Documents indicate that Eva found in Hitler a safe haven, away from the struggles for power. She spent her time swimming, taking photographs, and watching American films, which were banned for the German people. At a time when millions were dying on the fronts, Eva was living in secret luxury. Strangely, as the secretary's memoirs reveal, Hitler did not treat her as a wife, but as a piece of expensive furniture. He did not decide to give her official recognition until the final hours before their deaths, where a secret and bleak wedding ceremony was held in the Berlin bunker, while Soviet shells shook the walls. Thus, Eva Braun transformed from the hidden mistress to the Führer's wife for only 36 hours before accompanying him on the journey of chosen death. We are now in April 1945. Berlin has turned into a hell of fire, and the Soviet Red Army is only hundreds of meters away from the Chancellery. Hitler went down into the Führer bunker, a fortified underground complex 10 meters deep, to live his final days in a parallel world separated from reality. Here, the investigator opens the file of the Great Nervous Breakdown. In these hours, Hitler was not the military leader whose name made the world tremble, but a broken old man, his left hand shaking violently, and his eyes sunken due to lack of sleep and drug addiction. Hitler spent his hours moving phantom armies on the map, armies that no longer existed except in his imagination. In a famous moment known as the Last Fit of Rage on April 22nd, Hitler realized that betrayal surrounded him from every side. When he learned that General Steiner had refused to carry out suicidal attack orders, Hitler shouted in front of his generals for the first time, "The war is lost. Everyone has betrayed me. I will stay here in Berlin and end my life." The bunker witnessed stories that make one's skin crawl. While Hitler was planning his suicide, other Nazi leaders, like Goebbels, were planning to kill their 6 children with poison so that they would not live in a world without Nazism. The atmosphere in the bunker was a mixture of the smell of sweat, diesel, and imminent death. Hitler issued his most brutal order, scorched earth, where he ordered the destruction of all factories and water and electricity stations in Germany, saying, "If the war is lost, there is no need for the German people to remain, for the weak have no place in history." In this paragraph, we analyze how the cult of personality turned into mass suicide, and how the man who wanted to build an empire lasting 1,000 years spent his final hours trembling in a cramped concrete room, afraid of falling alive in Soviet hands. At 3:30 p.m. on April 30, 1945, a single gunshot was heard from Hitler's private room. His valet, Ling, and his secretary, Bormann, entered to find Hitler lying on the sofa with blood streaming from his temple, and Eva Braun dead beside him after taking a cyanide capsule. In strict execution of his will, the 2 bodies were moved to the Chancellery Garden, where gasoline was poured on them, and they were burned until charred, so that they would not be desecrated as happened with Mussolini. But here, the investigator begins examining one of the greatest mysteries in history. When the Soviets entered the bunker, they did not find a clear body of Hitler, but rather charred remains. Stalin announced to the world that Hitler had escaped, perhaps to Argentina or Spain. This statement opened the door to decades of conspiracy theories. Declassified FBI files later showed that the agency received hundreds of reports of sightings of Hitler in South America after 1945. Reports spoke of the submarine U-977, which allegedly transported him to a secret castle in the Andes. In 2009, American scientists examined a piece of a skull that the Soviets had kept, believing it belonged to Hitler. The shock was that DNA proved it belonged to a woman under 40. Was Hitler using a double who was killed in his place? Although the medical evidence of Hitler's teeth examined by the Soviets, which matched his dentist's records, confirms his death in the bunker, the absence of the complete body made Hitler a ghost haunting the 20th century. In this paragraph, we dive into the possibilities. Did the monster commit suicide in a dark bunker, as the official narrative says? Or did he succeed in executing the greatest escape in history, to die peacefully on a secluded ranch in Argentina in 1962, as some investigative narratives claim?
We are now closing the black file of Adolf Hitler. But before we place the final seal, we must ask ourselves, did Hitler really end at 3:30 p.m. on that spring day in 1945? For the investigator, the answer is no. Hitler did not just leave behind a shattered nation and a devastated continent. He left a political and psychological genetic code that the world is still trying to decode today. The most dangerous legacy Hitler left was not his armies or tanks, but the art of manufacturing illusion. Hitler and his propaganda minister Goebbels proved that people can be led toward the abyss if the strings of fear and hatred are played correctly. The techniques of brainwashing, controlling the media, and creating an imaginary enemy to unite the masses behind the savior leader are tools born in Nazi laboratories, and we still see them used today in advanced forms in the world of politics, algorithms, and social media. Hitler taught us in a harsh way that democracy can commit suicide from within, and that the ballot box might bring those who burn the box itself. Moreover, the world we live in today is a direct reaction to Hitler. The United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and international laws criminalizing genocide, all these institutions were built only to ensure that another Hitler does not recur. But the bitter irony is that we are still obsessed with this man. The more horrific his actions, the more human curiosity about him grows. Hitler is no longer just a historical figure. He has become the ultimate archetype of evil in the global collective consciousness. The obsession with films, books, and documentaries about his life confirms that we are still trying to understand, how can a normal human who once loved dogs, painted flowers, and was afraid of the dark turn into a monster planning to annihilate entire races in cold blood? In conclusion, Hitler's bunker was not buried under the rubble of Berlin. It still exists everywhere where bigotry and ignorance grow. Hitler was a universal lesson about the price humanity pays when it abandons the logic of reason and follows poisoned emotion. The bitter truth revealed by this investigation is that Hitler was not an alien or a demon from another world. He was a human like us, and this is the most terrifying part of the story. For if history produced Hitler once, it is capable of producing him again if we overlook the signs. The investigation has ended, and the questions remain hanging in the air. Are we truly safe from a recurrence of this madness? Or is the monster only sleeping, waiting for the next moment of weakness? To this point, we close the file of Adolf Hitler, the man who wanted to be an artist and became a butcher, and who wanted to build an empire forever, but ended up a charred corpse under the rubble. Thank you for following this expanded series from The Investigator. If these secrets have shocked you or made you see history from a different angle, do not hesitate to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell, for our upcoming files will be even more dangerous and exciting. Share with us in the comments, what is the single most shocking fact about Hitler's life to you? And do you think history has done justice to the victims, or are their secrets still buried under the ruins of Berlin? I am The Investigator. I will see you in the next file. Remember always, the truth is not always what you see, but what you try not to see.